Welcome to the Always Right podcast. I am your co-host, Jamie Vendera, and this is...
I'm Carissa DeLay, and Jamie, you act like you're like the person on Price is Right. Margaret, come on down.
Well, I told you, you said, do you want to start this, or do you want me? And I said, I want you to, because I'm lazy, because I knew I'd do something goofy like that. But,
yeah, but
hey.
that was... Remember, we're a vegan podcast. We keep it organic.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I can do whatever.
Yeah, for all our... But just, we're really not vegan.
For us being a vegan podcast, there are a lot of squirrels in these episodes.
They're alive, though.
Yeah, that's true.
We keep them alive. Literally keep our squirrels alive. Oh, so today's episode, we are talking about naming.
Naming.
Not Jamie.
Okay, naming. That's hard to do.
That is
Naming. Okay.
Yes.
So we're talking about...
What is it?
We're talking about naming everything, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Titles of your books, titles
Characters?
of your character names. Yeah.
This podcast?
Yes. Well, let's start with that one.
Yes.
Naming the podcast. So Jamie and I came up with this idea of doing a podcast about writing, helping authors, whether you're a book author, you're someone who just writes in general for fun, someone who's wanting to get published, or you've been published and you're trying to do it better next time. We wanted to create something where people could go to and have topics to refer to as we can help from our own experience. So then the always write is because we want you to always write, as if it was like you're always writing. Just don't stop. Keep going. But at the same time, the play on being always right was in there. So I liked the whole, like, we're always right, but we're not really.
Yeah, I love really witty names. Like when I wrote my first book, I actually woke up with the name Raise Your Voice. And I have been working with the methodology to raise your range, increase your vocal range. So you came up with the name Always Right. And did it just come to you, or were you thinking about it for a while? Because it's the perfect name for me.
Well, it's so funny is because I like naming things that have like, whenever I owned a salon in Ohio, it was called The Local. And of course, it was a local salon and an art gallery. So it had all the local artists. We were in a local area and at a local Masonic temple building. Everything was, just kind of focused on local. However, the name was, oh my gosh, an anagram. Is that what I'm thinking?
Yep.
Yes. My brain just went like...
I disagree with you. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. So it stood for loving ourselves, community, and life. So it had a meaning to the word "the local" because it wasn't just, we're just the local.
Isn't that a pentagram?
That's not a pentagram. Is it an antigram? Like, oh my gosh. Okay.
I don't know what it is. I'm just joking about the pentagram part, but okay.
Yeah, anagram, whatever. Anyways, I like things like that. I like it when you see a word and like, I'll put it together and make it mean something or whatever. So it's the same thing with this one. We always talk about always writing, just keep writing. So what better way to talk about multiple facets of writing than say always write? So it's all the ways of writing. So it was like perfect. It was like kismet when it came to the chef's kiss of titles for a podcast.
Yes, I love it. I love it. So, and I kind of mentioned my very first book was Raise Your Voice, as I am a vocal coach as well as an author. And it's so funny when I came up with that name, it was the name. And we sold a lot of copies based on the name, honestly. And then, of course, I got fans and they started using that. But like within a year of that book coming out, I think it was Hillary Duff. Is that her name? She had a movie called Raise Your Voice.
Oh, really?
And I remember Molly Burnside, the lady who does my book covers. She's called me. She says, "You're not going to believe this. Raise Your Voice." And I was like, how dare they? We're going to take legal action. And then I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure Molly's like, yeah, that ain't going to happen, Jamie. It's two different formats. It's inevitable. But it's your first book. You're so, it's like, that's my child. How dare you use the words raise your voice?
Right.
But it fit everything. So.
Well, so what about some of your fiction books where like Shifters? What made you come up with Shifters?
Well, okay. So when we started 7-Eleven Press, I had a really cool partner that we still use. It's Daniel Middleton from Scribe Freelance. So he inspired me, and Daniel was great at naming names. And I wanted to do a fantasy series for children.
Mm-hmm.
So something cool. And I said, I wanted to be way back ages ago. And he said, what? And I had an idea like tattoos on her body. He says, what about Age of the Sigil? And I'm like, okay. And then that branched off, and I wanted to do another series called Order of Five, which is with more teens. And it was like X-Men versus X-Files. So I was into this YA period there for a minute. And so within Order of Five, after Sigil, had the writing flow and it was going. And I thought, okay, these they're not like mutants or they're not metahumans. And I came up with shifters. And Daniel was like, "Yeah, that's great." I'm like, "Yeah, they can shift fire, or they can shift this and shift that." So Shifters, the character in it, Devin Podrick, actually he's not a member of the Order of Five. He was before their time, but it's all in the same universe. So Shifter,
You mentioned like how to maybe eventually connecting some of those pieces, putting a layout for people.
I really want to go back and reread everything because I write so much that my squirrel-like brain, ADHD brain, can't remember. Because you were talking about, we need to go over one of your books in the next podcast. I'm like, I have to read it and remember what I wrote about.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yes, I literally, the entire fiction series I've written, everything, even if it's a horror, sci-fi, space saga, they're all tied together. I've placed loose threads in everything, so I could go through a timeline. And I got one somewhere because I sat down with Daniel. I said, "I need your help." He's like, "Oh yeah, this was 2 million years ago, and this was 50,000 years ago, and da 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 da, and now we're in the future." So yes, I wanted one big world, even if it was again horror, or mafia, or whatever. So
You almost need like a chronological layout of your timeline and start plotting them on there where things are, like a
I
visual
do.
reference.
And since I am going to be forced to reread these books as we're talking about them, plus to finish up the ones I haven't finished yet, I will. I'll start dating everything and make sure and have that timeline. Then I'll get excited, and then I'll be like, "Ooh, that's a big jump. I need to write something 100 years ahead of this one." So there we go.
Yeah, see, there you go. So, with your characters in these fiction novels, how do you? I know, like DNA. DNA is another one of those like anagrams. I'm gonna make
Yeah,
sure I'm saying this right.
yeah, So DNA was for David Noble. David is an old guitar player of mine, a really close friend, a mentor, and it's funny. He wrote fiction years and like 20 something years ago. I'm writing books, and that's what kind of
Acronym.
interested me. Okay, anagram,
No, it's acronym.
acronym.
See, I knew it was an A word.
It's always wrong.
Yes, yes. Today we're
Acronym.
wrong.
I knew anagram. I was like, I don't think
I
that's
know.
like.
Well, that's why I was questioning it. I was like, it's not. Is it? Like the other acronym was not coming to my brain.
So David inspired me, and I like to pay homage to friends. And so I don't know how it popped in my head. Just DNA is like David Noble, David Noble alien, because I want to write a book about aliens. So that's how that came about. And I'm happy.
Yeah, and then you're gonna do RNA, which is about.
Yeah, that's Remy Noble Alien. That's actually his daughter. And since some of my books are, this is after the fact, and hey, writers, you can do this. So I wrote DNA, and then I wrote Siren. And the funny thing is, I'm sure there are books out called Siren, but it exploded. I wrote Siren in 2008, I believe, and then bam, they're everywhere. Maybe it was 2009. But that's another character. And I based them in the same city, in the same high school, but I didn't have them interact. And then I started thinking, you know what? Let's go ahead and tie David Noble, Remy Noble, Siren, Dark Waters, and then do a book called Aliens and Mermaids to finish it. So it's like two different series with duologies, and then they come together in one book.
Which I always love. I mean, I love mermaid stuff, like the Mako Mermaids, that Australian show, and H2O. Like, I love those. So I think that's great.
I've been I can't believe I have not watched that show yet. It's on my list because I loved Splash when it came out in the 80s.
Yes. I remember the Tom Hanks, yeah.
Yes. So that's one of the reasons I did it. I love mermaids. But
yeah, I think mermaids is an not unexplored, a rarely explored fantasy world sometimes. I feel like people don't go there as often. We go to vampires a lot. We go to werewolves a lot. We go to like those kind of more terrestrial type beings. We don't do subterrestrial like with the oceanic type stuff.
And, I kind of wonder because I've seen it exploding more. Of course, they've had the TV show like what you're talking about, but Aquaman was such a huge hit at the box office, and he was introduced in the other movies and the DC universe, and I'm like, is that bringing more focus on Atlantis and stuff like that? Because even I've wrote about Atlanteans in the
Mm-hmm.
Crisis Artifact, another series that I wrote. So, and even in Shifters, we go back to the time of Atlantis. So I've always been enamored with that. So I'm a tattooed, rock screaming, glass breaking lover of unicorns and mermaids. It is
And
what
there
it
you
is.
go, ladies and gentlemen. In a nutshell, Jamie's a nerd,
Yes.
which is fine because I'm a nerd too. That's funny because I feel why use Atlanta in Crystal Gate when the devil has to go retrieve something? He literally
Atlanta or Atlantis?
Atlantis. Sorry, what did I say?
Okay, you said anagram.
Stop it.
You said Atlantis. I'm
Well,
just
I mean,
clarifying.
well, anagrams are nice too,
Yes.
but I don't use those as often as I do acronyms. But at the same time, words
Yeah.
in the brain. So for me, whenever I was using Atlantis in mine, I just used it as a place that it wasn't a big topic. It was just more of like the devil raises it from underwater and then does almost a secret code to retrieve something to be able to access some stuff. Like he knew where it was the whole time. And he's just like, well, I just need this now. I'm going to go get this because I'm going to go get Alexis.
That's cool.
Yeah.
No, I love it. I love it. I love it. So, how did you name your books? Your two fiction books?
Well, so it's really weird. It's like for me, when I name something, I have to incorporate what the ending is. So it kind of Crystal Gate. After you read it, this is about a gate that is open by a quartz crystal. But it's kind of weird because I think about it constantly. I was thinking, perdition. I was thinking all these words because the devil was in it. All these words are just going through my head. We talk about the devil. We have his minions. We have a quantum physicist. All these different things. We're traveling across the globe. I have all these words coming in my mind. But when I made Crystal Gate, it was like 2 syllables, Crystal Gate. So when I did 4 rivers, it had to be 4 rivers. It had to be the same amount of syllables. But like in Crystal Gate, the ending is about opening up a portal with crystals. At the end of 4 rivers, it's coming together at the 4 rivers at the meeting point. So they come together based on where the book is going. Canvassed. Canvass now is about a serial killer who leaves his victims like paintings. And so it's canvas like with a K, so it's killing, but it's kind of like how for me, I have to kind of the story has to be completely umbrellaed. But before I completely solidify that's the name, I go on to Barnes and Noble and Amazon and I search that name out and see if there's any other authors that have those titles.
Yeah, because there will be a lot of books titled the same.
And but that's when I do mine. They don't have them. Like these only. I won't choose a name that already exists. I mean, it may exist now after the fact, but mine would be the first one. As far as when I publish it, it's not. I'm not going to create a name that already exists.
I'm pretty much the same way. I wasn't so worried about it with Siren because I didn't even look because I thought it's such a common term. Somebody's named a book Siren. Ironically, after it came out, there weren't a lot. Now there is. There's like Siren everywhere.
Yeah.
But I love it because this is meaning to you. So when you're coming up with a title for your book, make it mean something to you. Even if
the story.
Yeah, and the story. Even if the person looking at your cover doesn't get it, because the story I love about you is when someone looked at your cover, is like you give away the book because of the cover with the Crystal Gate on it.
But you don't know that unless you read it.
Exactly. So, but it leaves you intrigued. Crystal Gate just pulls me in.
Mm-hmm.
So
I had my license plate. Whenever Crystal Gate came out, my husband was like, "You should." I think my license plate at the time was K Delay, and my license plate before that was Sky's Mom. So whenever I did the book, my husband was like, "You should do Crystal Gate as your license plate this year." I'm like, "Oh yeah." So I did the CR like I can't remember how I did it, but it's basically made it look like Crystal Gate with a G and the 8.
Mm-hmm.
I changed that license plate pretty quickly because I got tired of being called Crystal. You're like, oh, your name's Crystal. Your license is Carissa. Whose car is this?
Yeah, my last name's Gate.
Yeah. But I tell you what, here's a squirrel story. I got pulled over because I did a rolling stop from off the highway onto the road. Nothing was coming.
Yeah.
But I didn't see the State Highway Patrol sitting off there watching that stop sign. Pulls me over, and she was one that she come up, she's like, looks at my license, she's like, your license plate says Crystal Gate, but your license says Carissa. Who's Crystal? I said, well, it's my book. And she's like, oh. Like, you wrote a book? And like she's like, what's it about? Like, she's literally there ready to give me a ticket. And she's asking me about my book. Gives me a ticket, but says, I'm going to turn my camera off, and I'd like to have a book if you have any. Took a book, and I signed it for her.
So she gave you a ticket, and you still had to give her.
I earned the ticket. I went through this. I wasn't going to deny the fact that I went through the stoplight. I'm not going to be dishonest about it.
Oh, that's awfully cool for you. I'd have been like, ticket or book.
Well, she turned the camera off, so it didn't look like I was bribing her. But I didn't get. I mean, I got the ticket, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Had a few of those.
I remember when we first got the Jeep, we had oversized tires on it. My wife, when she was back in college, she got pulled over. I can't believe she did. And he says, you were doing 10 miles over the speed limit. She goes, no, I was not. I was watching it. And he looked, and we still had the 30-day tags on it. He says, you know, this has got oversized tires on it, though. She's like,
which makes sure. Yep.
Yeah. And he let her go. And I said, I would have gave you a ticket with that attitude.
Right.
But he was nice.
Well, in high school, I went to State Highway Patrol camp, and the one thing I remember was they told me a story about someone they pulled up, and they're like, as soon as they rolled down their window and said, before they could even say anything, they're like, yes, I'd like a Big Mac, a large fry, and they said, I just let them go. It was too funny. They start ordering food. I'm like, okay.
That is funny.
So now let's talk about naming social media pages.
Okay.
Say it again?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, so for me, I could literally name my book as a social media page if I wanted to, but honestly, a personal opinion, I would name your social media page author Carissa DeLay, or Carissa DeLay author, whatever. Create your page for your fans, not a personal page, and then start putting your book down below or whatever. Anything that you do where you're putting it out there, don't only solidify it, don't house it into one
book. Correct.
One book, yes, because you're going to have too many things to follow. So, I mean, that's probably understood, but maybe some people are like, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't just create a page for my new book.
Yeah, and we actually been talking about this lately too. Don't, since I'm a vocal coach, I post a lot of videos about doing exercises and singing music videos that I do. In this day and age, if you have two different focal points, you might need two different pages. Like my Instagram is Jamie Vendera Vocal Strength Training, and I'm sure I'll change it. But if I start posting how I wrote my fiction book, I am probably going to lose some followers. So you got to look, if you're into baking,
right,
and you're also into writing fiction, I don't think I'd make your fan page about everything. I would put, Don Juan author, then Don Juan bakery chef or whatever, just so you can keep it separate. Yes, that's a lot more work, but if somebody's not into reading, but they love your recipes, they're probably going to unfollow you because you're constantly posting about your book.
Yeah. Yeah, so when you're naming your social media, keep in mind who your audience you're wanting to keep. Like, are you wanting to attract readers? Because you'll be able to isolate that, which we'll get a little bit more into social media on a future episode on the podcast. But it has to do with just keeping an idea of what you're trying to title, like who you are, and your book's kind of umbrella underneath of it. Same thing with your book. Keep your series together. I feel like when you're doing your books and the naming, keeping that consistent, I feel like I've said this to you. I know that I've got onto you a few times about things. When it comes to putting that title in there, make sure that someone knows they're a part of a series.
Mm-hmm.
Look, when you're Shifters, the Shifters, it's the same font.
Yeah.
Keeping the font the same. Yeah, and make it stand out. Don't make every book in your if you write several series or several books, don't make them all look the same.
Yep.
make them stand out from one another. Like I have Crystal Gate, Four Rivers, and eventually I'll have a third one, and the third one will have a 2-syllable name, and it'll have to do with the ending.
Well, that's kind of what I did with my horror series in Flight 666, which is actually an Iron Maiden thing. Long Cold Winter is a Cinderella thing. Moment of Death is just because that was the overall theme of all three books. The Moment of Death, which was really a big mind experiment after you get to the end of all three. But and those book covers do look quite a bit different, but they have that horror detail. Like it's a American Horror Story. Every season's completely different. So that was that focus. But I try to keep books like was Jamie Lynn Saunders, the Werecat Saga. Had like Feral, Rabid, Nocturnal. They look different, but the fonts were the same.
Right. But even the word association is the same. Feral, like the word, like the whole series, there's a similarity to the word, kind of like in the Twilight series or in the Divergent series or in the Hunger Games. It still has that similarity to them that they're a part of something. Like there's more coming to that. Like the Divergent, that there's maybe a subtitle to it, but the Divergent is the main focus. You know what I mean? Or Twilight books, she went Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, Breaking Dawn, all phases of this moon series. So it's keeping it consistent to tie into each other. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. What about naming characters?
Yeah, so for me, I'm pretty organized, which we talked about this in the organized episode. I make a list of all my characters, which I'm doing a little different with this one because all of them are associated with someone that I know. But in future books, if I don't have them associated with someone, it's very good for you to get in the habit of writing their names down and putting details about them. But like if you're looking for names for your characters, go to a naming book. Go to a baby name book. Look up boy names, look up girl names, look up gender neutral names. Or like what I did for Crystal Gate, I was trying to find names that had an Aramaic Hebrew origin because these were the devil's minions, essentially. I wanted to have that Middle Eastern origin of, like the Mesopotamian area, things like that. Just something of that area. So, because typically, even whatever religion you were, attach yourself to, everybody has like a difference. So when you have the devil in Christianity, you kind of feel that Hebrew Aramaic. So I wanted to kind of keep that naming, and each name of the devil's little minions had a character association to how they acted.
I'm glad you bring that up because you got to take this into consideration, because if you're writing a book that's based 10,000 years ago on Mars, the character is not going to be named John Brown. So it's even with Age of the Sigil, since I was thinking fantasy, and I love fantasy, so I've already read a lot of Shannara and Lord of the Rings. Daniel was the same way, so he helped me name a lot of those characters. But, we came up with names like Reeve Onid for this young wizard, or Esther Dane for this young girl who was a hunter, or
Right.
Pim the Knife, this homeless kid that had this magic knife tattoo, and he was always using knives. So we try to put it in that mindset, in that era. So look at that. Even if you're writing in the 70s or right after Star Wars came out, people were naming. It's so funny. I watched an episode of the 90s show today, and I know a lot of people didn't do this, but Eric Foreman named his daughter Leia, and he's such a Star Wars nerd.
Right.
And but that's fitting. So you got to look at the era, where you're at in the area of the world, to make sure you name correctly.
I think that's why I would have trouble writing anything that's historical fiction, like predating today. I could do futuristic, but I don't think I could do predate because I'm terrible with history unless it's religious history. So I would be really bad about keeping the canon of the culture the way it was, I feel like, for me personally.
And if you're feeling the same way too, then do some Google research, for common names, first and last names from the 1500s in Middle East or in Europe.
Everybody was a John Smith. What are you talking about?
Yeah, back then they were. So.
But here's the thing, and sometimes when we're writing, we think, oh, nobody cares what the meaning of my book is. Nobody cares what the meaning of my characters' names are. No one cares about these little things I'm putting in it. Okay, Do you think J.K. Rowling thought that whenever she was doing all these little side things in Harry Potter, and then all of a sudden this book series blew up, and now people are like, "Oh my gosh, did you know? Like, if you put this together and this together, this means this." Or little side things that you may think that may not come to pass may be important when your book blows up or your writing becomes something in the hands of multiple people.
I feel like they're Easter eggs.
I love
Like
Easter
you're,
eggs.
yeah, like you're really planting this, and if somebody is really an avid fan and they're diving in deep, they'll be like, "Oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh, I didn't even catch that."
Mm-hmm.
I love it, love it,
And I
love it.
know I put some of that stuff in Crystal Gate. I just don't remember them. So when I go back to, because Jamie and I are going to do a couple episodes here in the near future where we're going to reread our books and we're going to talk about them. So it's going to be kind of cool because I get to revisit, my baby, my first book, and be like, oh man, I remember writing that, and that was such a great sentence.
Yeah.
So we're going to redo that. We're going to pick some books from our own shelves, and do that. But we'll also have some authors coming on. Like Katie is going to join us in November for a recording, and we're going to release some of her stuff that she's got upcoming. So I'm excited to hear what she has to say. Today, even though we're recording this today, I know last week we recorded with Dr. Daughtry, which she wants to write a book now. And
We
hers.
kind of put her in a corner on that one in the
Mhm.
podcast.
But I think it sparked something with her, to be honest.
Good.
Yeah, I think it sparked something to where she never really thought about it deep, but then it was like superficial. So when we said it, kind of like exploded. And I think she might want to do that down in the future. So I'll stay on her.
That's good. I have always had people tell me when they've asked me about my writing, by the time we're done with the conversation, everyone has said, I feel like I can write a book now. I feel like you inspired me to go start writing my own book.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And that's
usually
what
when you and I get to talking and you're like, I just want to go right now. I'm like, yes.
Yes. Even this morning before we were doing this, I started counting up all the books I got to finish, and I'm like, yeah, I miss it. I teach so much and doing this and that, but I'm like, even though I love working with singers, don't get me wrong, but there's something magical when you're writing your own story and you're in that world. And it's been, this is going to sound like, what? That's not even a year. I haven't released a book since like last January, and I'm like, I'm jonesing for something. It's
Oh my
time to
gosh,
write.
it's been like the end of 2018, beginning of 2019 for me. So it's been a while.
But you've still been writing. You're writing, been writing Canvas. So, plus, because you're the smart one, going to college, getting degrees to tie in with your books, so they can be Professor Delay, and you're traveling all over the world and talking about aliens.
Yeah, we'll see. You never know. I feel like God changes my course all the time to make sure I'm paying attention.
Yeah, you got to listen. And you know what? Speaking of that, not just God, but your intuition. Pay attention to your gut. You may wake up and be like, oh, I was going to name the book this, but I woke up and it was like neon lights. You need to name it this. That's what happened with me with Raise Your Voice or Mind Over Music. I got that name. It's just like, boom. It's just right in my face.
If you're struggling, say like, I know I want to put the word, I'm trying to think of a random word. If I want to put the word,
Buzzard.
what do you say?
Buzzard.
Buzzard.
Yeah.
That'd be a book for John.
Yes,
That would
he
be a
could
John
probably
book.
write it and make it interesting.
Yeah, John would write about birds and buzzards. Like he'd be like,
Yes.
I hear 1,000 pages on buzzards.
He could do it too. But right now, let's hold the door, John. I want you to finish that book on dog training first, and then we'll move on to buzzards.
Yes. So like if you have a word, like I know I want this word in there. I want it to have killer in the title somehow, but I don't want to say killer. Go in, use your thesaurus, use words that sound like or word associations, and just like play around with other words. Like, oh yeah, this is a cool word, or just use colors. Use different words for colors. Like you could use chameleon colors. You can do vermilion murderer. I don't know. That was a terrible one.
Doesn't matter, but you're in the creative space, and this will happen.
Right.
You'll be naming things and plop, and you'll have 9 that are duds, but then boom, it comes to you.
Well, I'm trying to come up in my mind for my next book. I'm already naming my next book. I'm not even finished with Canvas, but my next book is already on deck, trying to like push it. It's literally trying to push Canvas out so it can get on schedule. But the title because I want to put the title at the end of Canvas because I'm going to put a little synopsis of my aunt in there. But I want to call it Alice, and I'm going to make it an acronym. So the word Alice stands for something, but you see that it's just basically called Alice.
Oh, that is cool. And you know what? That makes me think I can't write a book. I don't even start writing a book until I have the name of it.
Yeah, you gotta have something. Yeah, you gotta have something. Which I feel like Crystal Gate, I didn't officially name until I was into it and realized how I was going to finish it. And I'm like, yes, this is it. Because that one was a dream. I knew what I wanted to do with it. I just had to get the information out. So it was just flowing. I was flowing with it. And in the middle of it, I remember I was driving down the road on High Street in Jackson, Ohio, and I'm just like, Crystal Gate. And it just boom, boom. It was just, the sound was like there. So
yeah, I like it because Crystal Gate. And I like how it's flip-flop 4 rivers.
Well, I think I have actually in our notes. I keep tons of notes on my phone and on my computer, but I mean, I keep my grocery list on here. I keep my password, school clothes whenever my kids are shopping. But I have book names. Genesis Speciation. I don't know what that's gonna. I'm just names that pop in my head. Project Beginning. Some of these I can't repeat because
yeah,
they might offend someone. One of them says, "Why are you like that?" Is it funny? Like, why are you like that? Like, why am I? And that one, I was thinking I should write a book that's when people look at you like, why are you like that? I'm like, oh, let me explain why I'm like this.
Yeah, you know what? I can't believe my brain's always going. And not that I'm going to write this. I don't know why I thought this, but I was walking, getting everything ready this morning. I thought, like, branding yourself, or, if you're procrastinating, you want to be a better person. I thought to find yourself. Then I had like define yourself, then design yourself, then refine yourself. Like define, design, refine. And I already saw it as a book. And I thought, what can I do to do that as a nonfiction book? But that's just in my brain. I might write it in 20 years, but you never know. But it happens like
and for our listeners, I have a book idea. I don't really want to write it per se, but if you want to take it, I had this idea a long time ago of called Mind Affair, but spelling it almost is like it's my affair, but Mind Affair, to where you write this book series the whole time you think this woman's having an affair with all these people. But the thing is that she has a mental disorder, but her husband knows about it. And so she has these journals of these love affairs she's having. And that's what she's trying to do to just not have the love affair. She's just writing the love affairs down. Her mother-in-law finds it. Her mother-in-law basically wants to kill her. So it's like this whole process. I don't even know how it ends, but in the long run, you find out she's not actually having these.
Now, that's a great idea, Krista. So when one of our listeners decides to write that series and it blows up and it's a movie and all that, just remember that you gave it away.
Yeah. I don't know. It would be really, I don't know. I just don't have, I have the idea. I just don't have the passion to write that story. But if somebody wants it, it's yours. Take it.
There you go. There you go.
All right. So that's pretty much naming. I mean, it's just keep it organized, keep it focused on, your character. We've talked about characters and how if they're brass sounding, you don't want them to, you don't want them to sound like they're gentle. You kind of want their name association to work with their personality. Same with your book. Make sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was thinking of a character from A Crisis Artifact, Lionel Galton. He's an old, rich, staunchy dude, and he's just rough.
Lionel sounds like an older guy.
Exactly, and he's just in your face. He's a great guy, but he's just gruff. So, yeah, definitely. And I know we're wrapping this up, but I do want to say pen names. Some of you do. I used a lot of pen names.
Oh yeah.
So, how do you do it? We made them up. I had like Jamie Lynn Saunders for the Siren series, Drusilla Winters for the horror series. The one that I did, and that was helpful through Daniel because we did a lot of this together way back when. But I did come up with Gordon Massey for the Crisis trilogy, and that was because I started playing music at bars at 16. And two of the band members, they were all much older than me, but they were very influential. And Gordy McFell, he passed away years ago. Loved him to death, a bass player. And or Gordon McFell was actually his name, and Billy Massey became my best friend. So I named my pen name for that series Gordon Massey.
Mm.
And of course, since then I came out and thought I'm not going to use pen names. There was that stench, like you can't write in all these different genres. And who says? I'm
We do
writing in
what we
everything
want.
from mafia to YA to space novellas, so it's all right. But I do see that a lot of people will use pen names, if they want to keep their life separate or they don't want people to know that they're writing romance novels and then fantasy novels.
So I know my husband's listening when we release this, but I wasn't, and I'm not going to say allowed because my husband and I have a very open communication with things. It's not like, oh, I tell you to do this, you do this, or da, da, da. But he expressed that he really didn't want me to do a pen name because he worked really hard to get me to marry him and give me his last name, and he just didn't want people to start calling me something else if I got famous.
But I love Clarissa DeLay. I love that for an author name.
Well, I do too. It's fine. I am who I am. As we've talked, I do multiple things, so it kind of all falls into that, and then it's just who I am. But I think it's so cute because he was just like, I worked really hard for you to marry me. I really would not want people to call you something else if you got famous. That would be really weird. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So.
And it happens. So.
But at least there's our squirrels.
Yep. All vegan squirrels.
Yes.
So, yeah.
All
and
right.
if you have any trouble with naming, reach out to us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure we'll do some workshops in the future, and we may do a naming workshop, or we can work with you one-on-one to help you name it. We're both creative. We've named so many books, and Krista helps me even with my books, and overall with every author in Vendera Publishing. So don't feel like you got writer's block on naming stuff, because writer's block doesn't exist.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with All right, so since you brought that up, you know that I won, right?
I don't even pay attention because I haven't really pushed anyone to go. I haven't pushed all my friends and family to say yes, Krista.
I literally had a friend vote for you, so I did not sway anyone. She's like, "Hey, I really love this one, but I voted for Jamie."
Well, you tell your friend I love them.
Well, that's Miss Olivia. She voted for you.
Thank you, Olivia.
So, but guess
what? So I got one vote,
and
I got one vote, and you got like 167.
Let's see here. So it was 88% Team Carissa and 11% Jamie. Team Jamie.
Wow, I can't believe 88% of the people are wrong. That blows my mind. I never would have expected that.
You thought it'd be closer to 50-50?
No, I thought it'd be 100% me. So I love doing these podcasts.
Yes. Okay. So as we always tell you, you can reach out to us. You can email us at our email address, alwayswritepodcast. That's ALLWRITE podcast.
ALLWAYS WR.
This is where Rich comes in. Rich is the editor.
Always WRITE.
The Always Write Podcast. You know the name, Always Write Podcast at gmail.com. You can follow all of our social media, Always Write Podcast. My husband is my speller, so don't judge me for my lack of spelling ability.
Don't get on her. I think that I'm rubbing off on her.
Yes. So until next time, we want you to always write, but join us for our next episode coming out next week, always on Thursdays. And until then, I'm author Carissa DeLay, and this is
Jamie Vendera, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Okay. Goodbye.